Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my step-by-step painting, Cherry Tree at New Hope. This will be part 1 of 6. This painting was based on a lovely stroll in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where I came across this beautiful Victorian house in the springtime. In part 1, I create the entire background, all of the color base for this particular painting. I'm using acrylic inks, plastic wrap. I'm forming the ink, forming the acrylic paint, and forming the plastic to make different shapes. After I've got everything laid out with the paint, I apply some heavy weights and wait till it dries, and then I begin drawing in the house that I see. I hope you'll enjoy it and give it a like. You can also subscribe so you won't miss a part. At my links below, you can see some of the products I used to create this work. Now let's paint. I'm beginning my painting called Cherry Tree at New Hope. I'm going to be using acrylic inks and a lot of water, as well as some watercolor paint, and I want the paint to stay contained on the paper. So I've waxed with candle wax all the edges of my masking tape that's holding the paper down. I sprayed the whole paper down with some water, and now I'm coming in with acrylic inks. And putting them down in places I think will look pretty. I have an idea of what I want to try to create, but this kind of random start to paintings doesn't always cooperate, so I will see where it goes and take it from there. When the ink doesn't spread the way I want it to, I give it another squirt with the water bottle, because I want this to spread and be quite wet. I'm going to be using an imprint material, plastic wrap, to create textures for this painting. And it will not press or make any textures if it's dry, only if the paint is quite wet. The idea for this painting comes from a trip I took to New Hope, Pennsylvania, which is a beautiful artsy town that goes all along the Delaware River. I took a picture of a white Victorian house that was just splendid. Cherry trees were blooming at the time, and the whole thing was just sort of dreamy. I'm using some dreamy colors here. But again, I'm never sure exactly where this kind of random setup will go. So to be successful, you have to be willing to be flexible and roll with the changes. I know where I want the building to be, and I know where I want the tree to be. So I'm trying to lay out a basic format for that. Knowing I want the bottom of the painting to have a stronger, darker light, I am focusing more darks into that area, and I am using black paint, black watercolor paint, in addition to my acrylic inks. They're all water soluble and they all will work together. I can't tell you that this part is not fun, because it really is fun. I have found that to mix some black into the strong, lighter, brighter colors actually helps to create more textural effect once the plastic wrap is laid on. So I'm sprinkling pieces of black here and there all around the painting, and then making it get wet and run with the water sprayer. Here comes my eyedropper with the white acrylic ink, because in addition to the black, the white tends to pick up textures very nicely too, using the plastic wrap to press on top. So I'm actually using the eyedropper and just dropping it here and there. And we'll see what happens. That's usually the last step I take before I cover it with the plastic wrap. I am forming the plastic wrap into a long, thin tube to cover the tree, because I would like to try to print that as a separate part of the paper. Once I have that laid on, I will then scrunch up the rest of the plastic wrap and cover the entire wet surface. You know, you could see I reuse my plastic wrap, and that's not because I'm cheap. Actually, it's because little bits and pieces from previous painting presses are laid out and left in random patterns and ways that really can enhance my picture. So I save my plastic wrap and use it time after time because it seems to add something to it. It becomes imbued with little tiny bits of pigment. I'm spreading the white ink around by actually squishing it across the paper under the plastic wrap. And I'm making sure I have textures and crinkles. I push it in away from the edge so it doesn't leach the colors off into the table or into the tape, but keeps it contained on the paper as much as possible. And here's a nice little heavy piece of masonite that'll lay flat over the whole darn thing. And I found that putting additional weight on it can make even deeper textural marks. So I get out my handy Van Gogh reference book, as well as another odd book I had around, and weigh it all down with that, and then I'm done painting for that session. It must dry for at least 24 hours. The next day it is dry and it's like opening a present. What on earth will I find under here? Will it be beautiful or will it be... let's see. Well, I like some of the colors. It feels a little bit mysterious. Would it look better from that angle? And I do tilt the paper all different directions to see if something grabs me as an image. but I found the tree just didn't do what I wanted it to do. I decided to give it another go. Wetting down the paper with my spray water. Again. I'm coming in with some more blues and turquoise pigments because I wanted more blue in the very top. And I wanted it to be more intense in color, and it got too washed out for me. Same with my purple. Now I'm going to try to make the tree stand out a little bit more. Adding more intense colors around the composition. And really laying on some intense color on a tree that I'll repeat elsewhere in the picture. The colors are definitely more intense now. And I'm hoping that this next plastic wrap press will not leave it quite so faded after I take off the plastic wrap. At this point, artists will be painting whatever looks good to them, and what looks good to you will certainly be different from what looks good to me. But I love using these dreamy, magical rainbow colors. And it does make me feel like that's what I want to do with this painting. If this painting cooperates, I'll have a strong light side of the tree next to the dark I just painted. Ah, here comes the white ink. And that probably means I'm close to being completed with this second preliminary wash. Because that is sort of the last thing I do. I spray it to make it spread around. All these little spritzes I put on seem to create a little atmosphere of magic after the wax or the plastic paper is applied. And in case you're wondering, I really am having a lot of fun at this point. With this approach, it's going to look very, very interesting and exciting to work with, or it could, well, leave me with something quite strange and unworkable. But that's part of the excitement. It's very spontaneous, and you're just not going to know until you pull the plastic wrap off the next day. Here we go again. I'm forming to make the tree form and hoping that the tree form will come out a little darker but nicely textured this time. Scrunching up the plastic wrap. Cover the whole surface of the wet paint so it doesn't run all over your table, but will stay contained within the plastic wrap. Put a nice flat heavy weight on top. And then here comes my Van Gogh retrospective again. Time to check it out the next day. I think I can work with this, and I am excited to start, so I come right in with my white Conte crayon to do some sketching. Starting with the tree. The building I have in mind is several stories tall and a white Victorian gingerbread house. It has some challenging angles, and I'm looking at my reference photo on my iPad as I work. For this perspective, I'm doing something called eyeballing it. I have not laid out perspective lines to each side. I'm using the best guesstimate as well as holding up my ruler to my image. This front porch area was quite complicated and had a lot of angles. So I gave up on that piece of white Conte crayon that was not cooperating, and now I'm using white pastel to lay out my basic structures. And the good thing about using this is if and when I mess up, which I will do, I can easily erase it. Back to square one with the pencil. So the fun part was laying out those beautiful colors and trying to make it look dreamy. This is the hard part. And I would tell you that this part took me several hours at the very least to get it right. And I continued to adjust throughout the entire painting process. I guess practice and time improve the skills here. And I sure put in my share. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed my beginning to end painting Cherry Tree at New Hope. I hope you'll give it a like and subscribe. And if you click on the bell, you'll get a notice whenever I release a new video. I appreciate your comments. There are links to the products I use below, and you could check them out too. I'll see you next video.